We still have a few more to jump on. Is that Sarah's waving? I think we almost have everyone. Let's see. I think we probably can go ahead and start.
Okay.
Because the recording is starting as well.
Okay, recording?
Yep, it's recording as well.
Okay. Well, okay, everyone, welcome to 22nd NSTHA Chief Forum West Coast Edition. We're going to be wrapping up the review on the matrix in this session, in this forum. So we're going to start out with the exercises. All right. So as we're bringing the energy up, rock your body, starting with 5, 1. 2. 3. 4. And 5. Feel the energy moving in your body. Probably some tingling in your hands. Okay. So with that, I'm going to give the boost. Hands approximately 12 inches apart. And start to feel the energy building between your hands. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Okay. I'm going to boost it up a bit more. Anyone not feeling that increase, let me know. Okay, very good. All right, with that, we're going to take that energy and we're going to do our containment. I think we're going to do 3 containments. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. And pushing outward, clear your space. Clearing the forum. All right. Okay, everyone. So I think we'll start out with some of the remaining questions from the last, that we didn't answer on the last forum. So, Mrs.A.
Yes, Chief.
What's the first question we have in mind?
The first question is, can a consciousness actually die?
Oh, okay. It's more like a consciousness can not exist. More so than, I guess, it's more like it's a not existing type of a deal. More so than like, we think in terms of people just dying and leaving a body behind. It's just literally going into non-existence. It's not something that I would say, from what my understanding was put into the works when things, came into being, because it wasn't necessary to actually delete a consciousness in the beginning. But as things are now, and the kind of nonsense and craziness that exists in realms like this, consciousness are being deleted. And with the muscle testing here, we got a yes. And maybe I have this just for a little verification. Okay, screen. Okay. Can consciousness be deleted or die or deleted primarily? Yes. Was that always the case? No. That's something that we consider more recent that has evolved, again, due to this anomaly that has been existing for way too long. So, that was it. Are you okay? Okay. Very heavy. Let's see where this is coming from. Okay. We have someone on the forum who's got something on the funky. Give me a second, we'll get back. Let's try. We'll have something on, we gotta move it. We gotta remove it.
It's very heavy.
Yeah. Hold for a second. They don't show up so well. Whatever's going on in someone's life right now seems to be kind of intense, so. Continue. All right. Okay, Mrs.A. All right. Yeah, next question.
So you said that the only reason why consciousness can go into non-existence is it's necessary now that there's a realms like this.
Yeah, this is primarily, I would say, considered to be the nastiest.
The nastiest.
Yeah.
Issue.
So the next question would be then.
Okay, the next question. What were the Smiths injecting into Morpheus?
Oh, okay. Yeah, on that scene where they caught him and then, he was chained to the chair, to tell the truth, I think it's just a movie emulating a truth serum. So, we've heard that talked about in certain movies, those who don't watch any espionage movies and things like that. So, I can't say that, it's like, you can't really take it as really, what I'm trying to say, like serious. It's just as I said last forum, that it's just something that emulates what is going on, but not necessarily following it to the T. So, whatever they're putting in him, and I think it looks metallic or something like that in the syringe. But again, that's them symbolic. These guys are not geniuses. Movie makers are not geniuses. So, the whole idea of thinking that anything that movie makers make are ingenious and that they're geniuses, you're sorely, mistaken. They're just individuals who are just basically putting things out to entertain, 9 times out of 10, but primarily also to have subliminal messages that keep you locked into this illusion, locked into the system, into the chicken coop. So I would just say it's just something that they use that would be akin to, to a truth serum. Now, truth serums do exist, but I do believe that it's similar to like whether someone can be hypnotized by, a magician or, a hypnotist or not. So hypnotists will usually find someone that's susceptible. They can usually tell certain types of people who are susceptible to being hypnotized, but not everyone can be hypnotized. And even from what I understand having to do with truth serums, not everyone, will succumb to a truth serum or whatever this concoction is that they make, drug or whatever it is. So that's pretty much the answer to that. It's just literally, it's supposed to be a truth serum.
He also used it as a segue to introduce the concept of time again, because they were saying it only takes amount of time for to break a mind. Mm-hmm. They also use time in the example where they're like keep going into the matrix and doing certain things, and then they say time is always against us. So always that feeding program of time.
Yeah, in the sense that it really does, there are things in it that supports the system's mindset. So what Mrs.A was mentioning about time is very accurate. It raises tension. It feeds essence. The audience feeds essence out. With this tight schedule and so on and so forth. That in other words, it makes it more dangerous feeling to put the time, the time element into these movies. Very similar to, I guess, with Monsters Inc. They had a time thing going on there as well. And so many movies have, like it's about time. Again, I can't repeat it enough that this movie is not, this Bible of what this realm is about. It's just a symbolism of what the realm is about. So again, the time factor where I think it was his brain waves or something, are when they're normal, they flow at a certain, in a certain way, and when they break them, then it's just like, almost like a flat line, and it's just a lot of fears.
They added the fear of death program into it as well because they were gonna have to supposedly pull the plug on Morpheus before he so-called succumbed.
Yeah, and again, that's where there's a lot of things that I found confusing with what I've learned over the years, having to do with what consciousness is and the whole concept of death and what I call transition. So that was never something that was used in the movie. I didn't expect it to be used in the movie because they're not, studying the same things that I'm studying or going into the same areas that I'm going into as far as like what consciousness is. So again, for the movie's sake and excitement, the whole concept of dying and death and the finality of death. So again, I think even this one, I guess I can segue into what was we were talking about, having to do with. Sorry guys, I was up all night. I have to apologize. So I'm just a little, fuzzy around the edges. But
first concept, Chief, is that what you're referring to?
Well, I was talking about again.
I think I can read this. It might be what you're talking about.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, so it talks about how they were, even though Morpheus and the crew of Nebuchadnezzar were supposedly in the real, they were still abiding by limitations of the Matrix and the limitations of themselves being physical in some sort of way. Because Morpheus says, "Oh, it's because when Neo's like my eyes," and Morpheus is like, because you've never used them. You're still depending on the physicality, you said?
Yeah, in other words, there's still, it's literally like being in another matrix outside of the matrix that has that tint of green. In reality, it looked like the guys who were in the matrix were having a better time of, living their lives than these guys who were struggling against the matrix. So again, they're eating slop. They're, they can't really do a jump type of thing in, when they're outside the matrix, but it's as though they're training to be able to do all these tricks inside the matrix, even though, the scene came where they capture Morpheus and so on and so forth. I'm looking for all that training that they did in these simulations where the jump program, or even the first scene in the movie where Trinity runs, along the side of the wall or whatever. We never saw any of that anymore after that first scene. And so it's almost as though they weren't really exercising all the things that they were training for, except for certain things that Neo was doing. So, again, I think that there was a good message there, and it was primarily the dialogue in the movie. Certain dialogue that they didn't really, they didn't inject things that weakened it. That were the things that were very triggering. That talked about what this realm, is about. So, with that, we can move on to the next question.
What was Neo doing inside of Mr. Smith?
Again, I would say it would simulate someone coming in like an antibody, and inside of when you think of white blood cells and so on and so forth, or an antibody that's coming in to destroy a virus. So I would say that would be similar to that. But again, it was just Smith. He just went in and he literally broke his program supposedly. But again, in the sequels that again have nothing to do with the first movie, they resurrect the Smith, and all of a sudden he's that scene where in the second one where he's multiplying all these Smiths and so on and so forth, and this whole insanity that again didn't really make any sense at all. I don't know if anyone could follow those sequels, because I saw them, and I really knew that it was literally they were just made to just more or less debunk the first one. So literally, he was supposedly supposed to destroy the Smith program. Is how I took it when he did that.
Would you say that goes along with that mantra that density loves to throw in all the movies, that the density can never die, evil can never be killed, or something like that?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. But they did that with the sequel. I don't know if anyone's ever seen all those weird movies from like the 80s and late 70s or whatever. Friday the 13th and Jason and all of these, and at the very end where they think they killed the crazy monster guy or whatever, and it's all over. And then as the credits are running, or just before the credits run, you see the guy's hands and
Oh yeah.
And again, okay. So literally, it's like the system telling you that you can't get rid of evil. You can't change this. This is a integral part of existence. You have to have this evil, and there's no way you're going to get rid of it. So I felt that was, it was kind of like that, even though they didn't do it at the end of the movie because it was supposed to be done, finished, But again, made a lot of money. Hey, let's make another one, But also, let's try to dismantle the first one, because that one was a little too deep. A lot of people started questioning reality because of this movie, but not, but there were always people who questioned reality, but this brought it to the mainstream, and that's what the Matrix did. And that, I think, it served its purpose, you know, and it did a good job, even, you know, in spite of all the fiddling around that went on with the scripting. Okay, so.
So do you want me to push the optional question about going into Marvel and
Okay, because yeah, there was questions about the Marvel last forum about I guess equating.
it just says, what's the difference between the Matrix and the Marvel superhero movie? I can skip it.
No, I think it's because you did some research on it.
I did, because I forgot what the name of the character was.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a little.
So Mrs.A can fill you in on the research that she did, you know, and I'll just, you know, put my 2 cents in here and there. But she did, you know, a lot of research having to do with the character Thanos, I believe, and the crystals. It's like the number of crystals in this particular, I guess it was a comic strip or whatever.
It is the original of the Marvel series, one of the original times of the Infinity Stones.
Right, because they've done these movies having to do with the, you know, Infinity Stones and Thanos and whatever. And when the last one, I guess when they're doing all that jumping back and forth in time or whatever, all that stuff, that had to do with Thanos, right?
Jumping forth, it did have to do with Thanos, and they made him like the uber villain.
Yeah.
But actually, there was a villain that was actually more intense, and
Yeah.
that's where I didn't know about it until I was just curious as to seeing, you know, because you were talking about people channel certain things when they make, when they write movies or they write comic strips or anything, and you were saying that Sophia Stewart channeled something that, you know, light beings in terms of, or what would you say, Chief?
Yeah, I would say it was light beings really, who, and again, this was hearsay for me, so I'm, you know, don't just, you know, take my word totally for it. But this was someone who had said something having to do with someone asking her how she came up with the idea, and she said that she wrote what, you know, what she was told to write. So again, we got some pages from the book that was written in, and Sophia Stewart didn't write the book about her story. There was another author who wrote it, and I'm not really crazy about this person's writing and some of her ideas about what Sophia Stewart was you know, was doing and what she was writing in this book. She was a little bit all over the place, not a little, a lot of it all over the place, with religion and New Age and all this other nonsense. So as far as like with the book, you know, read it with a grain of salt. But again, we haven't read the whole book, so hopefully the story of what happened, you know,
didn't get lost in the sauce.
Didn't get lost in this woman's assumption of what she thinks Sophia was thinking when she was writing these scripts. Which I feel was like way, you know, way off base. So anyway, with that said, we can go back to the Marvel stuff.
Right. So I was just thinking about how Marvel, a lot of the Marvel movies are all based on the concept of the Infinity Stones, because a lot of these characters, they get their juice from stones. And so it tracked it back to the first comic strip, in which they talked about the stones as Infinity Stones. And that's how I ended up coming across a comic strip that looks like this. And there are actually 7 stones in the image. And it was interesting because people think, oh, the stones are really cool, but the last stone is the ego stone. It says there are 7 infinity gems and not just 6. The 7th gem is called the ego gem, which gave all the gems souls. If all the infinity gems are together, it will create the villainous monster known as Nemesis. And she's really crazy. Some of the things that she likes to do. What the interesting part about it, is that what it does, it says it can embed itself in the heads of living things to forcibly possess them and direct their actions towards its unclear goals. The minds of its hosts are supplanted, or they're taken over. And though echoes remain of the original host, they are mixed together with the dominant personality, confusing its motivations and slowing its progress. And it just reminds me of what Yin of Yin has done to everyone in this realm.
Yeah, and even what you can see if you really, really pay attention to how the populace behaves. There's so much, out there as far as things I talk about pretty much on the regular about how media and, in schools and religions and all of that tune individuals up to be in this limited realm. And what they're talking about, which is interesting, because that feels like a story that was channeled from someone also, because, we didn't even know this story until a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So, and it's max of things that I talk about and how density works and how the Yin character works, and that everyone is like something that he perceives in his own mind, and how he controls individuals to behave in the way that he behaves or how he wants them to behave. So there was more to that.
Yes, there's more to it. I didn't know if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. So one of the interesting things is that people think that the stones are altruistic or like, interesting or they're positive. But if you actually go, is it okay to go through what the original writer wrote about the gems? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Because I think it'll add some clarification. The only reason we're talking about it because it was a question that came up having to do with what the the difference between Marvel and and the Matrix.
It's a lot of differences.
Yeah, there are a lot of differences.
Yeah.
The Smiths would be the mind children of Yin of Yin. And the Matrix is the mind, the game that Yin of Yin created. So again, with these, they're talking about almost like the characters are Yin of Yin themselves, who are creating these type of situations with. Well, I don't know exactly what you're going to read yet.
Oh no,
but
it's so true. I'll go ahead and just go with them because they talk about things that you've touched on in a bit. So, for example, when Chief was talking about time as a program, it's promoted everywhere. So here's another example, which is the time gem. The time gem, with it, I can reach back into the primordial past or delve into the far distant future. Nothing that ever was or ever will be can hide from my inspection. And if I find anything which offends, I can modify it to fit my every need or want. Infinity is clay waiting for me to mold it. So this is Thanos or Yin of Yin talking about molding everything into his kinds of twisted concepts. And time is an illusion. And in the real, you can go to the past or the future, but it doesn't matter as much as it's so-called matters here in this.
Yeah, it's not really a fixed, past or future. Also, it's like it's hard for a mind who's locked into this realm to really think about it because everyone has been programmed into this linear thinking. So, everything when I talk about radial thinking, which I pulled back from that because no one really understands what I'm talking about when I mention radial thinking, but things are fluid. And that's the nature of everything. Everything is fluid. And if you notice that in this realm, they're always trying to lock individuals into some rigidity, and it always falls apart because they're trying to make something natural into something unnatural. And that's usually I would say, the ambition of the insane who wants everyone walking, in the straight line and just, like goose stepping, like in World War II, So anyway.
Okay, the next one, Chief. So this is called the space gem, and it says the space gem distance becomes a mere intellectual concept. I consider the possibility and I am there. I can be everywhere or nowhere. And Chief talked about how actually the most true form of communication is intent, and speed of thought is actually the way that consciousness can move in the universe, and you don't have to walk places.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that he they cover this again. We just they just came across this stuff several days ago, but it's literally like they're telling you a bit of what really is out in out in place to the next like you do here. You don't have to. If you want to, you can express in an expression where you're walking around in an avatar and having these certain types of experiences. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just something's wrong with the way that it is here. That's the only thing.
That's what you were saying about why the Matrix is so weird, because even when they go to the real, they still have so many limitations.
Yeah, it doesn't break through, in other words, there's still a ceiling that they haven't broke through with the movie The Matrix, because it doesn't really deal with consciousness, really. But they talk about mind, but they really don't, put those together with the whole concept of consciousness. Consciousness and mind are one and the same. So mind, consciousness, and so on and so forth. But again, where was I going with this?
Sorry. Well, you were talking about how people think, like, because they're trained to think it's light years away and you can only get there on a spaceship. But actually, in the real, you can travel with thought and intent.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with the whole concept of astral traveling. When a person comes out of their physical body, i.e. their avatar. And I've had numerous of those types of experiences, starting when I was quite young. They slow down after a certain point because what happens when you have that ability to do that and you go beyond I would say, the grid or the matrix, you really have this desire not to come back. Because once you go outside of this, it feels different. There's a lot of folks who have who do astral travel. And there was a movie, I think Out on a Limb or something like that, might have been done in the late 70s or something, Shirley MacLaine. And, she's doing these blading guys or whatever. And she had, an out-of-body experience, but she had this silver cord that was connecting her to her avatar. And they were telling her everyone has this cord that's connected to their avatar, which is literally just like, when you put a dog on a leash, and one of those leashes, and, they can run just so far and then it yanks them back. And that's literally what the silver cord is. So when I had them, I think I've talked about this before, maybe in one of the forums, where I, didn't turn around. I never turned around and saw my body in the bed. Also, after that movie, I looked down to see if there was a cord coming out of my navel, and there was no cord. So, which meant that I came in quite differently, didn't get hooked up to the machine the way that they hooked everyone up to the machine, because there are times that I went out so far that I literally did see novas and all this other kind of stuff. But it was very, very colorful whenever I went out, and I would move at the speed of thought. Mm-hmm. So, and what happened is that when I would come out, there was always some density that was trying to catch me, or make me afraid to come out. So, but I just had this thing where I would just even involuntarily just come out. Sometimes they would pull me out, just partially out where I couldn't get all the way out of the body, and then they just do this menacing thing around me, which would scare the crap out of me at first. But I would always calm down and just say I'm going to pull myself back into my body. I would move a finger or something like that, have to concentrate, and then come back in. And then usually would tell them to get the hell out of my room. After I came back into my body, I could still feel them say, get the F out of here, But they were literally succeeding at keeping me from coming out, at that time. But later on, I would start to feel myself come out. Then I would do a number where I flip myself out really fast and go right out of my room. And I would have to figure out where I wanted to go at that very moment. So there are times I have been out in the outer universe, in the stars and all of that. There's times I've been in some other dimensions where there's things that are really, really very strange in these, in these particular dimensions. And there are books about it. I think I mentioned a guy's book before. I'm not going to mention it again, but he has some experiences that were connecting him to these different dimensions that were locked into the same realm that we're in. So there's times that you can go out into the real, what I call the real, which is where you when you go and you transition out, there are various dimensions. And when we were doing the forum with the Alexa, she said there's 10, but I always got 6. But she's part of the system, so they're telling you that there's 10 dimensions that density dwells in, but there's actually 6 that I have. And every time I check, it's always 6. But outside, it's endless dimensions. And so someone said, how can you think that, if you are locked into the head filter, it's hard for you to fathom it. But if you are connected to the mind consciousness, you can fathom anything.
Chief,
yes.
When you travel, can if someone doesn't know what they're doing, can they be possessed, or can entities hop into their avatar while they're gone?
Yeah. Yeah, it happens quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Sometimes people don't even need to leave their body. Something will remove them depending on how strong they are mentally. They can be removed and pushed aside, or convinced to allow something to come in and push them aside. So we talk about individuals who sell their souls. A lot of those who sold their souls, the actual consciousness that was in that particular body, especially for someone who came from a modest background or something, but they have this talent, and it seems like people are interested in this person's talent. Density is also interested in that person's ability to draw people's attention with their talent. Then they make a deal that, okay, you can be rich, you can have all this stuff. All you need to do is sign on the dotted line. And say, oh, really? Yeah, I'll sign on the dotted line. Said, thank you very much. Read the right, fine print. Boom. Now you're in this box, and now I'm in your body. So there are certain individuals, I think some of us have talked about, that there are signs that these individuals are not quite like everyone else. Every so often, their glamour drops, and you see what they really look like.
Like when people get blackout drunk, Chief?
Mm-hmm.
They get pushed out of their...
Yeah, it's voluntarily, you're voluntarily allowing yourself to be pushed out of your body. And again, there's a number of folks who will do this. They go out and get, as they say, shit-faced drunk with their friends, or blackout drunk, and they won't remember anything that they did. And these folks said, man, you put on quite a show last night, and they won't remember anything because they literally made themselves pliable, and whatever wanted to jump in there, jumped in there, and then took over. It's like joyriding in your body. And I've talked about a story about a guy that was a client for a minute several years back from Germany, and he stopped, drinking, period, because he almost severed, fingers off of his hand, and he wasn't supposed to be able to use his hand again, but somehow he was able to use it again. He just took that as a sign to stop drinking and going out with these, with his friends. And what happened with these so-called friends, when he stopped drinking, they just ditched him. They just dropped him. You're not our friend anymore. You don't go out and do what we're doing. So, to get yourself on the right track, it takes it takes more nerve to do what's right for yourself than to do what everyone else is doing. So it takes a lot of guts to actually, get on a journey that's helping you out and stay on that journey. So anyway, listen.
Yes, Chief. Okay. Next up is the Soul Gym. And as you can see, there's all these, they're displayed as physical bodies, but they're actually a representation of souls or consciousness, actually. So it says the soul gem. As with the other gems, this is a tool of manipulation. So it's showing you the intent of all the gems, including the ego gem, which holds the psyche of its maker, which is Nemesis. And with it, the very core of what life is can be twisted and bent to my fancy. With not but a thought, I could transform a race of peaceable sentients into a barbaric horde of cannibals. And it's interesting because Chief talked about consciousness cannibalism, which Chief talked about, I believe, in your book, My Neo Shamanic Journey. Yes. And so it says, I can turn sinners into saints and saints into monsters. And the dead, their souls are also within my control.
So really, it's like what, again, the Untitled story, that he's taking consciousness from the Supreme Consciousness universe, and he's literally lying and manipulating them. And it's not that they're stupid, it's just that they've never experienced this kind of weirdness before, and allow them, end up, taking, it's like being gullible, in a sense. Excuse me, taking someone's word for something because they've never had anyone like them before. And so he took them in, and then he would, manipulate them for his agenda. And one of the things that Mrs.A read earlier had to do an unclear agenda, other than he really was throwing a super temper tantrum. And there's probably going to be a little bit having to do with that, with the one person's death or whatever.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. Sure. So there's definitely
before you finish.
Yes, Chief, you first.
Also, the whole thing of turning peaceable people into little monsters. I've talked about a study that had been done years ago, having to do with mob mentality. That people in a mob can be infected by one person who goes off the rails, and next thing you know, the whole mob goes off the rails. A person by themselves have much more control over what they're going to do. They, unless they're just really, really just out of their mind, and in general, most folks will stay in line. They'll stay as balanced as they can in the situation, and very in other words, let's say more reasonable. I should say they tend to be more reasonable a lot of the time when you're on your own, opposed to when you're in a mob. I've never been affected by mob mentality, and I don't like mobs. I don't like big crowds. I've been in them enough to know that there's a really weird and funky energy when you get a mass of people together. So if you go like to music concerts and things like that, yeah, I like to see the entertainer and so on and so forth. But after a while, it was always some crap that went on there that really kind of screwed up my enjoyment. So I don't know if it had to do with my vibration wasn't dense enough or whatever it was, but it was always some nastiness when it ended up being a mob thing. Or you're sitting in a baseball game and a bunch of people around, and someone hits you in the back of the head with a box or something like that. You're turning around, this kind of crap, this kind of nonsense. So again, mobs, groups, big groups, I really don't care for them. So anyway.
Yes, Chief. So the next one is the concept that Chief's talking about as well, and it says the gem of power. It backs the might of the other 5 jewels of infinity, the beauty that makes all things possible. It draws strength from the ends of infinity and enables thought to become reality. It is the glue that holds what is in place. And it was interesting, Chief, you were talking about how that, please correct me, but if not all of the consciousness that are here used to be peaceable sentients that were turned into consciousness cannibals. And you were talking about how yin and density define power as the game that they're playing, but it's not powerful to trick a bunch of consciousness who are not aware of your game.
Yeah, well, density is extremely cowardly, for one. Anyone who's experienced any of the paranormal stuff, they usually do their dirty work in the dark, where you can't see that well, or even if it's daytime, someone gives you a shove and you look around, no one's there. How if you're a frightened rabbit, well, most mess with anyone. But if you're just, a coward, how do cowards behave? They like to do things under the cover of dark, or a lot of times they show up as a mask, and that's what happens when I'm pulling attachments out of people. Very seldom do I find one singular attachment, one singular consciousness in there. It's usually a group of them. So, with that said, yeah.
And you were talking about how thought becoming reality is normal in the real, and it's not about. Usually when they talk about power, it's like power over others because of fear or insecurity or a bunch of other weird programs.
Yeah, well, fear and insecurity is in there, but basically insanity is a major problem. Yeah, so you don't like that. So again, one of the things I've been sharing a bit more recently has to do with the amount of insanity in the whole populace. So, I would say it from moderate insanity to just major insanity in this world. So even if you're a light being, you end up, this realm was designed to literally just destroy consciousness, feed on it, consciousness cannibals, and destroy it. So anyone who thinks that, outside of this setting, thinks that they're really, getting over with all this little material goods and all this other kind of crap that goes on in this very, very limited expression, they're slated for the chopping block themselves. So even with past expressions, there are individuals who are well off in one lifetime and then they're poor in another. So again, density has no allegiance to anyone. A lot of interaction with density that are willing to talk will always talk about the yin of yin never keeping its word. Always getting them to do stuff, but never keeping his word. And there are people in this world like that. Have you, promise you money if you do all these things and, and do all this heavy lifting and so on and so forth. And when it's time to, to get paid, all of a sudden there's a story about money and not having any money, and then you're just, you're that's out of luck, literally. So again, those are, I would say, direct yin of yin clones. Those types of individuals who behave like that, and that happens all over the place. So, yeah. Was there more that you wanted to add to?
There's more. If
you want to go into back into the matrix, but let's see where this is going.
Okay, the next one is the mind gem. It's the one it's quite a doozy of an image. So it says, the mind gem, no thought shall remain a secret to me. Every mind is mine to open and examine. I can reach out and feel the dreams and aspirations of every living being in the entire universe. They touch me but do not affect me, for I am Thanos, far above such concerns. Billions of fertile minds waiting for me to sow the seeds of my own perceptions and goals. A universe of thralls. And it looks like they're suffering. So his universe is about suffering.
Well, it's bending consciousness into, in other words, it's locking consciousness down. So once a consciousness is locked down, the suffering begins. So, that's literally, and also what I was going to say having to do with insanity a bit is that there are a lot of ways that they make you crazy here. And it seems like they pile crazy on top of crazy on top of crazy and then try to distract you with something else so that you don't realize just how crazy they're making you here. And that's where I've been there in the past, where I just felt like I'm just losing my mind in this world. Like, why am I even doing this?
And you were talking, Chief, about how there's a lot of different kinds of access points that density uses, into your hands or into your feet when people walk, or, into the private parts as well as the chest, the stomach, what people eat, and what people think, what people hear, what people see.
Yeah, it's a very toxic realm. It's like walking, around in poison gas all your life. And it stains everything. So talking about, it goes through your pores. People walk places. I've had clients who, one client, for instance, in England, and she was pretty clear before she went to England. But wherever she was, there's all this density coming out of the ground, and next thing you know, she's all, all toxed out. And then had to, track it back to literally where she was walking, where she was going. And there's certain places that are chock-block full of spirits. Spirits are everywhere. The disembodied or whatever are everywhere on the planet. But some places they are just really centralized, very, 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 dense with a number of ghosts and things like that. And the majority of them are, all ghosts literally are connected to density in some way or another. Even ghosts that someone thinks, oh, it's my grandma who really cared about me. Yeah, she may be hanging around thinking that she's doing you some good, but she's literally a Trojan horse. What she is connected to is also keeping you open to density. So even when I talk about, your grandma's around, before I used to say, it's okay, she seems to be okay. But as time went on and the individuals continue to have problems, I then was able to pinpoint that this particular spirit that was hanging around the person was causing the problem, even though that spirit wasn't even thinking that that's what they were. They don't even know where they are, that they're in a toxic realm. And if you open up to them, a flood of toxicity comes into your system.
Chief, sorry to interrupt. There's like a gust of wind going into the mic.
There's dust.
A gust of wind going to the mic.
Oh, it's picking up the air conditioning.
Oh, okay. You can turn off the air conditioning. Well, I think I have the control. Let me see. Now, this has been going on the whole forum?
No, it started. Well, if anyone else was hearing it too, you guys can chime in. But to me, it felt like it kind of started when Mrs.A started talking about the stones.
Of course.
Oh, really? Interesting. Because it's been on since the beginning. So anyway, I turned it off. Hopefully, I'll make it better. Does that sound any better?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, it's good to let me know. Okay.
That's interesting because usually, like, Chief put up his newest album, the third album, Where Do We Go From Here? And certain songs that Density really didn't like, the sound would get distorted, or it would pick up really weird things or add extra music, beats
Yeah, it was
to
doing
it.
really, really odd. Yeah, the music didn't sound like what I had written. And we had to change the speaker. And actually, it's a little bit off track, but
Sorry.
the speaker, no, it's okay. The speaker that we were listening to the music through was a speaker that I used to use in the studio at the other house that we lived in Nathan Song. And if anyone remembers what happened to things that were in that room when it had all these people coming in with all their toxicity, it started to degrade things in the room. And saying, what's going on with this speaker? It was doing its own thing. We hooked it up to Bluetooth. You could hook it up, but it was playing the songs really weird, didn't sound right, and so on. And then we tried to turn off the speaker, and it wouldn't turn off. And actually that was the one where I was dealing with the cell phone, with the my iPhone, which I used to use all the time with that speaker, and it refused to turn off the music when I wanted to turn off. And that's the time where it left a text that was very belligerent to me after I kept trying to get the thing to turn off. So I don't need to repeat it, what it said, those who were in session I shared with. But it was, it had some really nasty, on my phone to me. So anyway, we're talking about things getting toxic, contaminated, machines and things like that. Yeah, the speaker is one of these things. But that's okay. I got it in my room and I'm kicking its ass. I'm going to continue to kick its ass till it starts to act right. But anyway, with that said, we're worried.
Okay, so and even if you couldn't hear me, you can also go back through the forum and read the comic strips that I read for you if you like a more thorough explanation.
Well, you said the interesting thing was that when you first ran across, you weren't sure if that information was going to be,
Useful.
useful. and then you try to find the site that had that information, the original site, and it was gone.
Yes.
So you had to search again, and it was able to find this particular site.
Yes, and it's interesting because you said to go ahead with the matrix concepts,
Right.
and the next one that says. The next one in the lineup, it says a singular consciousness that spawned a whole race of machines in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And
I think that's where we had an AI question or something like that, this thing that Elon Musk is talking about, which is a distraction. And even just afterwards, with my sense of it, is that it was a distraction, and then we just muscle test it anyway. That's exactly what it is anyhow. I think we answered that in the last form anyhow.
And Chief, would you say it was actually a reference to Yin and Yang creating a bunch of consciousness that had a similar insanity to himself?
Yeah, and the AI, it's what it feels like with the AI thing is that they wanted to do a yin and yin number on tech, to create something that will do everything the way that they want it done. And if there were some questions having to do with, the stuff with this vaccine, and as I delved deeper into it, it was already there, but I wanted to get more clear on what I was picking up about it. And it's an attempt to literally turn everyone into literally robots, that will just follow their orders. And they've always had trouble with that because consciousness has a desire, you push it down, it has a desire to rise to the surface. It's like, a balloon. You push it down, or a ball with, one of those balls with the air, and it just still keeps wanting to come to the surface. So they've failed over and over and over and over again. They have you thinking that their system is so locked down and so on and so forth that you can't, buck the system, but it's been bucked all the time. Even consciousness, who they've manipulated in a certain way, still won't stay in line, but for so long. You get the ones that are really beaten down, who'll just keep their head down, and and even for density, those type of people aren't really that interesting to them. They kind of like a little bit of excitement, but they don't like too much. They don't like you to challenge them too much, but they like a little sport with those with their food, literally, almost like cats or something.
Yeah, it's like once they break you, then they're not interested in you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you're talking about how Yin of Yang's personality was very much like just into abusing consciousness and then wanting things that he could never have, like, which is you were talking about how consciousness, they strive towards balance, they want to strive towards supreme consciousness, the real. It's like you said, buoyant, I believe you said.
Yeah.
And how Yin of Yang was so jealous that that consciousness would willingly follow supreme consciousness, and that they would never willingly follow him. He had to constantly brainwash them, like the soul gem, all those weird manipulation. He had to manipulate them into following him.
Yeah. Well, I think that AI is a metaphor for what the system really wants. They want obedient little robots, but they can't. Nothing works without a consciousness here. So even when we talked about certain machinery, certain machines and tech, and then looking in and just finding consciousness connected to those things. So again, this is the conundrum of the yin of yin and the system. How do we create obedient food and get the essence of a consciousness from it? So when Musk is talking about, the AI is taking over or whatever, maybe it's parallels with individuals, maybe the vibration changing on Dunia, Gaia, Earth, where certain people are just not wanting to just walk in lockstep with anything, but they never really did 100% anyway. But anyhow, I felt that there was a little something else that I'm missing, not really missing, but I wanted to add to it. but it's kind of slipped my mind for now.
Okay.
But we can go.
Go on.
Yeah, we can
Then,
go on.
okay, the next concept is feeding the dead intravenously into the living. And they showed a visual of that into the pods where it's fed a black liquid that the souls or, the people were consuming.
Yeah, so they show a little baby. They show a little baby, in a pod. And if you recall, there's this black liquid that comes in, which reminds me of black ooze. So, but isn't there something with it in the soul, those soul stone things where they're talking about, feeding people?
Yes. So in this article, it talks about the ego stone, and we plan on doing a segment on the website, the neoshamanic.com, called the Neo Shamanic Perspective. And we'll add some interesting links if you're willing to check that out. And so this link is actually talking about how this certain character called Nemesis, that actually was the creator of the stones, because actually what's interesting, it was saying that the stones were created because this consciousness was super lonely, super isolated. So it decided to break itself into pieces. And Chief was talking about fragmentation. When consciousness delves into the density, they fragment. And so yin of yin was fragmented. And it talks about how this character is so crazy that she wants to create a reality made of the flesh of dead heroes or whatever. But that definitely has to do with black ooze is dead consciousness that have lost all their energy.
Yeah, they're still awake but unable to do anything, literally. So they just exist, and just I can say used as building materials or anything else that those who are still moving around desire to use them for.
Chief, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Can consciousness come back from being black ooze?
As far as I've seen and I've tried, no.
Okay.
So it just exists as, it's just tapped out. He taps out all the energy. All there is, there's been some movies that have shown, What Dreams May Come is one of them that I think of, was a Robin Williams movie some years ago, where he has to go and save his wife who's going into depression, and she's on the verge of committing suicide because he passed on, and she was all bummed out and just depressed and so on. And he had to do this mission to try to pull her out of her depression, because they in the movie they felt she would end up in this field of these people laying stuck like in mud. It was like mud, but it was black. Everything was black, like black ooze, really, which was really interesting. And he's walking through, and it's literally, you have to step on people to get, across this field. And some of them are trying to talk to him while he's walking through. And that's literally the closest thing that I saw to what I see when I'm on the other side, looking at black ooze. But it even gets to the point where they just become liquid, and they're just, it's hard to describe. It's almost like looking at crude oil or something like that. And, so the best and the most, I should say, humane thing to do is to send them into the vortex and return into deletion, literally.
This non-existence isn't painful.
Yeah, non-existence isn't painful.
Chief, I have actually, I searched on the internet just now.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please check if you think it's okay? I have this picture. It says black goo in Indian River Lagoon has been found. Is that correct?
This is recent?
It doesn't say the time frame.
Well, yeah, it's a real story, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's also this stuff that I think I mentioned that in the past also, but repetition is cool. Having to do with the guy who was talking about this stuff called black goo. But it was like this black mass of, looked like goo or tar or something, but it reacts to things. So you put heat in there, it starts to move away from the heat like a consciousness. And also more recently, there's these things that look like this black, you know the ones they're talking about, that black, and it seems like it has a lot of different little tendrils sticking out of it, but it's unidentifiable. It's, there's no record of what this thing is, but it also reacts to things as well.
Yeah, they have pictures of images of like this black goo chief that's moving literally away from a magnet.
So this is
yes, this is the video. Yeah,
that
and it's alive. Yeah, and but it's very minimal in motion and expression.
Yeah, it can't just get up and just like split, but it just it tries to move away, and and over a certain amount of time it will move away from whatever it is uncomfortable.
Chief, it's
Yes.
Nelly. Is that similar to what they're saying that's in those vaccines, like that graphite stuff?
I would say that there is an amount of what you call black ooze, and graphite is another form, or it's formed as like what's called calcified black ooze, and then there's liquid black ooze, and whatever's in between. And I would say that is the same, because one, everyone has a bit of that in their system, because this was created from density. And so when I'm pulling things out of individuals energy, I'm pulling these things that are connected to this black goo and black ooze. And when your energy levels get stronger, it actually forces more of the stuff to the top. Those of you who understand what I'm talking about, purge points, where you have actually some fluid or something coming out of a welt or something like that just comes up, and then you start to ooze something out. And sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's yellow, but it's all the same thing. But if you don't freak out and go to the hospital where they say, oh, this person's trying to purge out our toxins, let's give them something that'll keep it in. So if you're doing the clearing yourself, the things that I teach you how to do for yourself, you will find that will go away within. Sometimes it goes away overnight. Sometimes it goes away within like 3 days. So they are putting stuff in people, and again they kept changing the story, and that's what was really raised. The fact that they called it a pandemic raised a red flag for me anyway. But the fact that they kept changing their story was really a big red flag. That tells me, why would I go along with some of this kind of thing when if someone like a family member, or even someone, just a friend, comes to you and starts changing the story about a car they're trying to sell you or something like that, you're going to get suspicious after a while. So no, this hasn't been any accidents. No. Oh, just a little fender bender. Nothing really. Then if you buy it, you find the whole chassis off or whatever. And this is what they're trying to sell, like a really fake bill of goods. And they're up to something, and it has to do with primarily control. Again, it isn't working that well, because a lot of people have died, and they stop counting after the beginning of the year, or they don't even want to record the counts of people who died, or children who died from this stuff. So anyway. Oh, that stuff. Well, that has to do with. Yeah, that has to do with hologram.
Okay, so go ahead and go with the next thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, that is made of of calcified black ooze too.
Yes. So show it or don't show it?
I think at this point you don't have to show it. Probably do it in
another one.
form.
Yes, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next concept that comes up is so a computerized dream world. I think this is a part of the speech inside of the matrix, all the feet, talking back and forth. You were talking about how you were more triggered by the verbal communication over the images in the matrix. And one of the things that was said was computerized dream world built to keep us under control, to turn a human being into a battery.
Yeah.
But you said it'd actually be more accurate to say consciousness into a battery.
Yeah, turn consciousness into a battery because consciousness is energetic.
Yeah.
And he had no ability to generate any more energy after where he was put. So that's where all the deception and everything came in. It's like someone, some story, movies or something like that, or probably some stories where there's an individual locked away in some, cave or something, but they pretend like, the cave caved in and they're in there by accident or something. I just happen to be, searching this cave and then there's a collapse and I've been stuck in here. Please help me out. And so that's literally what, again, he's, locked in this place where he was put, but then he convinces some, the consciousness, undamaged consciousness, to assist him. And by assisting him, they become contaminated by his rhetoric and his lies and so on and so forth.
Yes, Chief.
Yeah.
Should I continue?
Sure.
Because you were saying that's where the joke where Neo goes into the vehicle and they pull out that thing that looks like a shrimp, that tech out of his navel, and she's like, here, look here, Copper Top, and you explained, because I didn't even know, I just ignored it.
Yeah, when she called him Copper Top, she was calling him a Duracell battery, literally, yeah. And I guess they got money from Duracell because that's the battery that Morpheus holds, to turn us into one of these. It's a Duracell battery with a copper top.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem that was in the part that was interesting that didn't make sense was the part where Neo and Trinity were at that phone booth, and there's a homeless guy like staring at them, and they know that anyone can be turned into a smith, babies, homeless people, grannies, it doesn't matter, but they're just like, I have to say something to you, I'm like, come on.
I have to admit, every movie I've ever watched has something disappointing in it too. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Every movie I've ever watched has something in it that's like, why? And yeah, exactly. They're in danger and the guy rescues the woman or whatever, or she gets him out of whatever, and then they stop and and looking at each other's eyes, and it's like, you should be running, dude.
Yeah, or like they're in a war zone. They're like, we have to make time to, fuck.
Yeah. Or just that's how they screw with you with the time thing, because you're like, time's a wasting, man. How come there's bullets flying all over the place, but you want to say something really deep to this person? Let me tell you. But again, because they were wasting all this time, the Smith, shot the phone or whatever and broke the phone before Neo could actually, get out of the Matrix. But of course, they had to find some way to keep him in there so there's some more action and so on. I get it, but it's always dumb. Hollywood does a lot of dumb stuff.
Okay.
But again, it's just obvious. There's a homeless guy. He knows that anyone can be a Smith. It's like, wow, dude, you didn't study, did you?
Should I go to the next one, Chief?
Sure.
Okay. As long as the Matrix exists, consciousness will never be free. That one is true.
Yeah, I said that's right on. But these consciousness who were trapped by the Matrix, as long as the Matrix exists, they'll never be free. As long as the system exists, consciousness will never, in totality, be free. But again, so many are so damaged that you don't even know if they're capable, or even understanding that there's something that's trying to help them out of the situation. They are inert with their with their pain and agony and suffering, because they've been convinced that that's what it is, And there are people who've said that, even one of the parental units where had a standoff with one another, and said, I don't know what you want. I said, I just want to be happy with my life, man. And he said, you can never be happy. I was like, well, I can at least try. And that's really what I said to him. I said, well, I can try. But that mindset, they've had all this suffering and agony and so on and so forth. And they're so locked into it that they feel that this is all there is. This is all the universe has to offer, is pain and agony, suffering, stress, and all of that stuff.
And you were talking about, Chief, that even when people, because they're still connected to the system, did you want a muscle test about that? Or
Which one?
about how, whether people are, still connected in that way, or should we skip it?
We can muscle test, and it's always,
Okay.
it's hopefully we got the little dense boys. I pulled the number of them out, so we'll see what happens. Okay. All right. They're already starting up, man. Okay. And now, we're talking about whether folks are, how did you put it?
Chief, you were talking about how you're not of this realm, so I was just thinking that I don't think you're connected to the system.
Oh, that. Well, okay. Am I connected to the system anymore? And I got no. Let me see. That's no. I'm working. Am I connected to the system anymore? No.
Is everyone else, including myself, connected?
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone else is still connected to the system. Some are a little less connected because of the work, and those who are getting less has to do with the work. Now, is it anybody's work? No. Is it my work? Yes.
Shit!
And we've had a few times, more than a few times, where certain clients are doing really well, and they have to separate themselves from individuals who are trying to pull them backwards. And then these individuals will say that that person has joined a cult. They're likening what I do to being a cult or a cult leader. The difference between me and a cult is that anyone's free to leave at any time. And I don't do brainwashing to try to convince folks that they have to, or they'll die if they leave or whatever. And if the person goes, I don't have in the other members, other clients run after them and try to pull them back.
That's what the cult that I was from did.
Yeah, because they understand cult. This is not a cult. This is a movement. So, it's a movement, not a cult. And everyone is free to come and go as they please. But if they become a problem, I literally kick them out. So cults don't kick anyone out. They just keep them in because it's all about whatever their money or whatever else they're into, their egos or so on and so forth. And that's not, I don't operate, under those kind of shallow, means. So anyway, for anyone who's had anyone, say something like that, having to do with you being interested and into what I'm doing and doing all these exercises and feeling better about yourself, they start throwing this cult thing around, say you have the freedom to go and come and go as you please, and you're not, what is it when, what's it, witchcraft, but I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the term from, someone's just under someone's spell. So anyway, just to put that out there, because it's come up more than a few times over the last couple of years. All right. Yes, you can, man. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's heavy. Hold on a second. It's in there. you want to play? Do you want to play with me? Do you want to play with me? Do you want to play with me? Do you want to play? One lot lighter, good. All right.
So, there's the next concept. Well, actually, you're talking about how people want the, without, if the matrix doesn't end, consciousness will not be free. But people, even when they watch the matrix, they want the matrix to end in the way that they think it should. Whether in a flash of light or sparkles or whatever. But it's like dictating how the end should be.
Oh, you're talking about with this in the real life, or you're talking about the movie?
In real life, because people, they think of the Matrix ending as a concept, but they don't want to see the reality of it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, movies and media are so ingrained in people's minds and consciousness in this world that they have very little in the line of original ideas, or able to glean something that is so outside of what they've been trained to believe that they will inevitably have their own, fantastical ideas about what escaping this realm is. So 9 times out of 10, someone will explain a movie, and movies come from the system. So I said, well, what about the Matrix? And we talked about that the system, that certain things get by because of the money, really. I thought they were making a lot of money, but again, there were these messages in there that kind of got past them. And when people started to react to it, even though the majority of the individuals who were reacting didn't know what to do with that information, they still felt that that's dangerous, so they had to, create these other, these sequels to just send it off into this wild goose chase where, there's Zion, the space underground, and there's these guys and these, what are those, robotic, machines fighting, the squiddies and all this. It just became more of just Hollywood nonsense, really, in the end. So the thing that folks have a hard time with, and it's programmed into, the fear of what might happen. What about tomorrow? What about next week? What about next year? Always the fear of what, what's around the corner. And that's introduced by the system, by the Union system, to have you just afraid of, of just, almost like every minute, because something bad might happen. Or some people will say something bad will happen. I've known people like that too. And a lot of times when they're like that, they're actually inviting things to happen. Like I said, accidents aren't really accidents. And, over the decades of, checking it out and really getting into how things feel just when an accident, just before a so-called accident would happen. And then what happened when my vision went to the direction it went. No more, mishaps, no more cutting my finger a couple times a year while I'm cooking or whatever with a very sharp knife. None of that stuff. I use sharp knives now, and I'm just going by feel a lot of the time.
I cut myself this week.
Yeah, and she's,
I can see.
She can see whatever, I see other things. I don't, I see, to tell you the truth, I see what makes, what's important. And it helps that, Mrs.A is around for me to be able to navigate around the things that aren't as important. But what I see the other realms a hell of a lot clearer this way. And I have a sibling who had issues with her vision since she was a little baby, and she was always able to see the things on the other side better when she had her glasses off than when she had them on. So where were we with?
Okay. We're talking about, well, the next concept is that the whole concept of how Neo was freed from the system or from
Oh,
the
right.
Matrix, and it was slimy. It looked painful. It did not look easy, and then they had to pull that thing out of his head, and unscrew something.
Unscrew that, yeah, from the back of his head.
Yes.
And so if folks are taking it literal, they just say, they think in terms, wow, it's like that, these.
Unplug me.
Yeah, plug it in those other hoses go pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
And then, all you need now is just to have some acupuncture and whatever else they were doing on the Nebuchadnezzar, and then, you're good to go on the other side. It's not that easy. So, it seems painful, but it's more emotional pain with the real releasing yourself from the matrix than physical pain. But there is physical discomfort when your body starts to change according to the amount of energy that's coming into your body. Your body has to change because it has to push the density out, which we call crystals or black crystals and so on and so forth, that will build up in certain areas, and a lot of you know how that feels. You have this pain. I say, what you're going to do, you're going to use your intent, and you're just going to pull and keep pulling and pulling. And so your intent is like a magnet itself. So it has to, in other words, it has to obey. In other words, your avatar has to obey your intent only if your intent is clear enough.
You were talking about, Chief, that in my opinion, the only person I know that is connected to their energy, to where their intent is strong enough, is yourself. And those who are clients, you're helping them to get more and more of their intent cleared so that they can help to do the certain things that they need to do.
Yeah, and they're doing better, by doing these exercises. And, you guys will tell me, and other clients who aren't even on the forums will tell me that, yeah, they're doing exercises, they feel better.
Yes.
No ailments like head colds and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
Or even those who had things that were considered to be ailments that were removed because I understand them as consciousness, that are literally in there attacking and feeding. So,
Is that why people have to understand that your tools come from you, and that they borrow them because they're using your clear intent to manifest their containment? Is that true?
Yeah, and I had to do it that way because of, and I've talked about this before, because of individuals who want to take things from others and then proclaim it as theirs. That even when it came to the flower salt, when I did the research on that, my own personal research on that, and found out that flower salt is not really to be eaten, and that it has these other properties that those of you who use it know how it feels. That but I told this person who was telling people to eat the stuff, and when we I think I told the story before also, that when we ate it, it's like
Yeah.
we eat this shit, and and it didn't feel good either. And we both, after trying it once, said, no, I'm not going to do that. Went back to, pink Himalayan salt. And then I said, I think this is for something, and I can say that whatever intuition within myself, or even information from the associates or whatever, I got the idea that let me try it in a different way. And when I tried it in a different way, it was like, whoa, how come no one knows that you can use it this way? But when I told the individual who had everyone eating it, he started parading around like he discovered how to do it when I discovered how to use it. So when it comes to my tools, I can claim my tools. I only allow those through my own intent to use my tools if they're doing it properly and they're not up to any funny business. So it's not about my ego or anything like that, but I don't like nonsense. I've been through, a whole crap load of nonsense with individuals who, like I have a kick me sign on my back or something, taking things that I said and then, pretending like they came up with it themselves, they stand, and then I said, that's exactly what I said a couple of weeks ago, and then they pretend like they didn't. I said, you know what, later for you folks. So this is how it is. It's mine, I created it, I give you permission to use it, and if you do it wrong, I'll take it away from you and see if it works. I can take it away. People know that I can take it away.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes clients will feel kind of like, some clients will feel like, oh, well, I have these tools, so even though Chief told me to cook for myself, I'll just go eat out anyway because this tool should work. But it reads their intent.
Yeah, if you're not really serious about your journey literally, it's not my journey. I'm on my own journey. Mrs.A is on her own journey. I just facilitate that journey. I show you doors that you haven't been able to see. So if individuals, want to play an ego game, you don't play an ego game with what I do. You can't even begin to understand how I'm connected to the other side and how that side is connected to me and those on the other side. So when individuals do some things and they see certain, beings who are associates around or show themselves at times, and then they start goofing off and thinking that, oh, I can do what he does, whatever, pigeons are talking in their head. Guess what? All of a sudden they disappear, don't they? There's those of you who know what I'm talking about. They disappear until you get back on track properly. So it's about respect and consideration. And respect and consideration for those who are doing you a favor. And that's all I ask. So yeah, I have total control over it, and I can take away what I give too. Definitely. But I'm very, very fair. I may be the most fair person you'll ever meet in your life. So anyway.
Thank you, Chief. The next concept was the JUMP program.
Mm-hmm.
And how they said your mind makes it real. And you were saying that the belief of everyone in the matrix keeps the matrix going.
Yeah, and that's what's going on right now. With the vax thing to keep the minds locked into the system. And that's why they're so, doing, just aggressively, trying to force people to do this thing.
Booster shots each month?
Yeah, at first it was just, you just need one shot, then 2 shots, then booster shots every month, and then, what's next, man? It tells you that the system is scared. They're afraid. So what was going down in the movie The Matrix is going down now, but it doesn't look like the movie. So don't expect the movie. Don't expect, just all of a sudden me and Mrs.A donning, high-powered rifles and guns and, blowing everybody away. Anyway. Sorry, I got off track. But
okay, well, we can go to the next one.
No, but again, you can repeat this.
Oh, repeat. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just to make sure.
Okay.
That I covered
well,
it
it was just about how people's belief in the government or people's belief in the concepts of love or fear or their jobs or their businesses or making a career or their family or their friends. They think that that's separate from the matrix. That is the matrix.
That is everything that you experience is interpreted by the matrix. All these things that you think are light and love, they're all interpreted by the matrix. They keep telling you things like there is such thing as true love and all that, even though you've never really seen anything beyond true lust. And then after the true lust sort of fades, then where's the love, man? Because it isn't real. They feed all this stuff to their food. And then they tell you that's what drives people insane. They say, oh yes, there's someone out there for everyone and all of that. Or there's this, your soulmate and all this kind of business. And yeah, I thought that person was my soulmate. I guess I got the wrong soulmate. There's no soulmate, really. And I've explained that, how consciousness works. We're on our own journeys, and there are times that we interact with one another, but how we move is like an explosion outward. So So we may be close to one another in the center, but you inevitably will move further apart. Doesn't mean that you don't like one another, but you have to respect each other's journey. Therefore, you don't have to be all up under anyone because it's not a physical thing, this journey. It is a consciousness thing, which means you can connect with all consciousness that you want to connect with when you're in the Supreme Consciousness universe. And you can actually do that even now. There are individuals who are, over the years, who I had as friends, and we may talk maybe 3 times a year. And we were cool with one another. You know, everybody's got his thing going on. I got my thing going on, and so on and so forth. Or he was single, and then I got married, and I had kids, but we still, you know, he didn't say, oh man, you can't go out and have beers with me anymore. And that, you know, it was like, oh, wow, that's what you're into right now. I said, yeah, well, you're into not getting married. That's cool, you know, whatever. You know, so, you know, it was just mutual respect and consideration, literally. So if you think in terms of that over these, you know, these little flowery concepts of soulmates and love at first sight and all this other kind of nonsense or whatever. And a lot of times if it's love at first sight, some dude looking at some really pretty girl and, you know, his nads start to work and then, boy, I'm in love with that chick. No, I'm in lust. So anyway, Mrs.A.
You were talking, actually, you listed off a few phrases that were examples of this behavior in terms of like holes in the matrix.
Mhm.
Like, you know, being the one is just like being in love.
Oh, right.
Oh, and no one can tell you you're in love. You just know it, balls to bones. You know thyself, and you can't die because I love you.
Yeah.
That stuff.
Yeah, that was something they pulled out of the garbage dump and they threw in the, you know, in the movie. I guess to connect with those who are hopeful. You know, that there is true love and all of that business. And, you know, and the last forum near the end, I guess you and I kind of laughed at that line of the Trinities, you can't die because I love you.
Yeah.
And, oh, as much as people really want to believe that stuff is real, it isn't real. It isn't real. You know? So that's another one. That's a gift from Yin again also. Yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah.
'Cause
They're reacting to it.
You were saying that actually the concept of love, which we've said over and over, but it doesn't
It's a
really.
loaded word.
Loaded word, the origins of the word, but it doesn't stick because of people's desire to believe in that gift from the Matrix, you said.
Yeah.
And you were talking about different phrases that gives you an example of how controlling and manipulating the concept of love can be. You were saying that the concept, I have to have you, you have
Right.
to be mine,
Mhm.
you're mine, we
Yeah.
belong together.
Yeah.
They don't realize they're the one for me, or you're the one for me, you're my better half. But
Yeah.
I'm in love with you, or he said he loved me.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where love, and I, you know, and I've used it for certain things in the past because I figure, oh, this is the language that people, you know, are used to. And if I were to tell them that, it's about, you know, respect and consideration, you know, they wrinkle their noses up and, you know, and just walk away. So even one of the songs that I have on this new album has like the word love in it, you know, a couple times or whatever. But that was written before I just decided, you know what, later. You know, this is about respect and consideration over this concept of love. Or even, well, this is maybe a little bit off track with it, that there an individual would tell me that, you know, certain, you know, people don't like me because of, and I'm like, well, I said, I don't really care as long as you have respect for me. So I'm not going to dance and jump through any hoops just to try to get people to like me. Or you don't need an audience to feel good about yourself. You know? So it's not like I'm nasty to people and just, you better respect me or whatever. You know, because I'm not like that, you know, obviously. But I do have my limits, and I do have to get passionate at times to push through certain blocks and certain walls that individuals have. Because what they're doing is trying to encroach and block me from moving forward. But they want to be in my sphere with their walls. So you can't be in my sphere for long with walls, because I will knock them down eventually. So wherever I was going, but anyway.
Well, you were talking. I asked you once. I was like, Chief, do you have an explanation for? I don't need them to like me or love me or whatever. I just want them to. They just need to respect me. And then you gave me an example that really helped me to understand. And it was like when you go to the grocery store, and you go to the cashier to ring up your groceries. You don't need them to love you or like you or whatever. You just need them to ring up your stuff and not be an asshole and let you go, which is enough, a decent level of respect, and then go.
Yeah, be respectful and considerate enough to do your job and not be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so and sorry, but yeah.
Thank you. I thought I'd share that story you gave me.
No, that's good.
Thank you. The next concept is the whole fear tactic of the squiddies and the monster AI. And you were saying that the system loves to throw another villain out there for you to focus on them. So instead of focusing on the system being the real villain, just like Hitler or even in that concept Thanos, they threw Thanos out there because Nemesis was actually the bigger threat.
Yeah, and it was almost as though Game was playing both parts or something in that story. You know, when Nemesis, which even though Nemesis means enemy, and I don't know what the hell Thanos means, but anyhow, the system definitely does that, and they decided in the 1900s that this guy Hitler would be a great fall guy for the most evil person on the planet, when the individuals who were pointing their fingers at how evil he was, they were just as evil as he was. Just that, he had better PR and, and nicer looking uniforms, I guess. But the reality is that this, system is always pointing fingers at others to try to deflect from their ill doings. So that's a yin again tactic also.
And you talked about like density loves to do marketing. So like if their deity is like wrathful and everything, then they'll just make another deity that's friendly and very charismatic, and they're like, okay, I'll take this part, and they think that they're not going along with the system, but it's just another arm or wing of the system.
Yeah, and also the smiley face is usually covering something pretty nefarious as well. That's one of the things that you find in this world that I found over the years through just regular research and putting pieces together and seeing how the system works. So even with the United States, they have two political parties, and they say, well, the Democrats are the really nice people, and the Republicans are the really evil idiots or whatever. But the reality of the matter is that they're all working for the same boss. So they put a smiley face on the Democrats, but they're still perpetrating the same nonsense that the Republicans were perpetrating when they were in. And so that goes across the board with a lot of different a lot of things. There are individuals I've had relationships in the past where the woman said, well, ran across a woman who was more naggy than she was. Well, at least I'm not as naggy as that person. I said, well, being naggy isn't good, period. It's like, the line of demarcation. Anything below the line of demarcation is not good. Anything above it is cool. But I don't care if you're just below, you're still not cool. I don't care if you're here or all the way rock bottom. You actually have tipped the scale to negativity. So anyway, that's another form of how people are manipulated. And then also folks trying to cover up their insanity by pointing to someone else's insanity. That I'm not insane because he's more insane. She's more insane. But if you really look at, then they look at themselves and they know there's something up. But all this has to do with blame. All this is set up. Again, this realm has definitely been created to just destroy consciousness, and in the process of that, to actually drive everyone just nuts. To the point where you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you don't know what you're doing. Why am I here? What am I, I have, you don't have, feel like you don't have control of yourself. That's where, dealing with attachments and all this other stuff. This is a serious cesspool, and I've said it before, Mrs.A have said it also. This is a serious cesspool. But you can't escape it, but it takes work. So it's not like a few cables popping out of your back. Oh, it is like, thousands of cables.
Chief,
Like this, like that. Yes.
So when the shift is, or it happens all the way, will Dunya or like be a cesspool anymore? Is what I'm trying to say. Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying. The idea is so that Dunya will no longer be a cesspool. Yeah. And it's only a certain type of energy that can do that. It's like a certain type of really, really strong energy that can cleanse that vibration. Because density does not do well in high vibrational situations. But you're going to add something else, add something to that?
no, you answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah. So, what you're seeing and what they're refusing to show primarily in the States, having to do with, all the weather stuff that's going on around the world, that is what's in the works right now. But it's all about blinding the populace because they need the minds of the populace to keep this system running. It's the minds of the populace that keeps this going. So they convince the populace that this is all there is, and some get to the point where they're just afraid to think of anything other than what the system tells them. But those are the individuals really going to crash really hard because it's changing in spite of their denial.
So you were saying that there's like thousands of plugs on people's in people's energy, and that each one has to be removed, because consciousness cannot handle all of the plugs being removed at once. They'll go insane.
Yeah,
more insane than they already are.
Yeah, and there, individuals come in. This was a few years ago. Unfortunately, I haven't had anyone who's that delusional, in several years, where I just want to be totally clear, just clear. I said, that doesn't work that way. You can't handle being cleared like that. Because every time I pull out something, new energy has to come in and take its place. And then you have to do all your containments so that that energy can come in and take the place of the density that I'm pulling off. So if I grab, all the cables go yank like that, it's over.
And you were saying that when you pull plugs during sessions, if they don't do containment and do what you're instructing them to do, they can get new plugs.
Yeah, and also folks will have whatever they think is themselves talking to them. It's okay to eat that cheeseburger. That's one cheeseburger. It's okay. And it's not. You're so used to hearing that voice, you think it's you, but it's not you. So for some, it's scary. So I've had individuals when I tell them what's really going on, it scares the shit out of them, and their density. So if they're as afraid of their density, they're gone. They never see them again. This is fine. I don't care. That's their freedom to do whatever they want to do. But the reality of things can be kind of grueling for certain people. But there are some folks, like this one woman that had that comic that was pretty funny about the Fight Club or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you I think you know better than I do.
Oh yeah, it was a picture of who was Mr. Smith? I forgot. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that actor.
Oh, Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Okay, it's a picture of him. I think in this movie called Fight Club, and it was saying that there was a title that said everyone, and they're afraid of what reality is. Whatever is coming, they're afraid of anything that has to do with the reality being something that they don't assume it to be. And then she's saying myself, hit me as hard as you can, it's like.
Yeah, so,
It's like,
she's not a client, actually. She's
not.
She's friended me, but she's, she has some pretty interesting posts. But yeah, she was saying that, whatever it takes for me to get the hell out of here, hit me as hard as you can with the truth. And that's literally, is pretty much the best place to be when you're doing this work, not to be afraid of what I bring to you that is the truth. Mrs.A, she's had dealt with this herself, and we're still kicking. We're not walking around decrepit and and beat up and so on and so forth. Because I do everything that I prescribe to my clients, all the containments and all that stuff. Even if my energy is much stronger, I still do the containments and things. And Mrs.A does the containments and all of that. And she's constantly working on it while she's doing other things. Not that she's containing all the time, but she's delving into the realms that I'm talking about and deciphering for herself certain things. Not to change anything from what I've told her, but to actually apply it to her journey, if that makes sense to you. So anyway.
Thank you, Chief. So the next concept is to talk about, if you want to, was another hole in the matrix that had to do with Cipher. Him being, he wasn't really, he wouldn't be a part of the real being as shady as he is.
No, he wouldn't be part of my
Definitely
team.
a
No,
Trojan
not at
horse or
all.
something.
Because I would sense him.
Yes.
I can sense a certain amount of the density that's in clients. So I know if the clients are, serious about the work, we'll just get to all those things as we move on. So, but I do keep certain things in check. And someone like a Cipher, he could never, well, I had some who were clients kind of like him, but they're not clients anymore. He'd end up being, on the, out with the rest of them, on the trash heap with the ones who came in with their own little deceptive, program as to what they wanted me to do for them that had nothing to do with what I'm teaching.
That question was submitted, is Cipher a Trojan horse?
Yeah, he is a Trojan horse, in that movie. Yeah, he's totally a Trojan horse in the movie. And I've had plenty of Trojan horses come through over the last, almost 4 years now. And I can feel them when they're there. They don't scare me because I have control over what I do. I know, if there's someone who can, cause a major problem, and even the ones who have been a bit of an issue aren't a major problem to me because I deal with them anyway. I can sit in the same room and just sit there and they're thinking everything's okay, that they're pulling the wool over my eyes, and yeah, I think I got them going. But I'm looking and I say, oh, this guy's really messed up. And he's very, very, very dense, or she's very, very, very dense. Let's see where this is going to go, because I might learn something else about how density works. So I'll sit there with them. Because if I was afraid, then no, and then I wouldn't learn anything. So I sit, and I'm not afraid of, what if that person pulls out a knife and that's not going to happen. I say I can feel that type of energy. And those types of people are so that crazy that I wouldn't give them an audience anyway. But there's the kind of crazy who are very delusional and so on and so forth. Yeah, I've sat with those individuals. And I have learned a lot, from watching them and how they operate and how similar they are to a whole lot of other people out there. So anyway, Mrs.A?
Yes, Chief.
Yeah.
So I think lastly, because we have 5 minutes left,
Okay.
the concept that, there's two concepts, but I'll see if one is appropriate for how much we have left for the forum. So have you ever marveled at the beauty of the Matrix? Is, I think, Smith talking, billions of people living out their lives totally oblivious. And then the next one was what Neo said is at the end. I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how this is going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you, a world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries, a world where anything is possible.
Yeah, well, that one, I really like, because it does really smack of, the system coming down, the matrix coming down. And there are no needs for borders and all the things that he said at the very end, which definitely, I would say, was very authentic to probably authentic to the original script. And I did have something else to say about that. I'm forgetting when we talked about it. If you can remember.
What I was thinking about was what you were talking about, how in the real there is this speed of thought. In the real, the way that you can travel with your consciousness, and in the real, you don't have to, depend on your eyes or your ears or your avatar. You can be consciousness, energetic consciousness, if you want to.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when I'm working on clients, I sense it with my being. I sense what's there. There's times it will reflect in me or in Mrs.A empathing the client and feeling certain, either pain, which has to do with something dense in a certain area, or just even a certain type of feeling where you can tell where things are. So, the eyes are, these eyes are literally in this realm are designed to just see this realm. But again, since Univision was never, perfect at anything, there are individuals who can see things that supposedly they're not supposed to be able to see. But again, that's even changing even more because of changes that are going on Dunya Gaia Earth, where the dimensions are collapsing. And I've mentioned this, numerous times now, where people are seeing things, weird things, on the other side, all of a sudden there's more ghosts or whatever that they're seeing, And some of these things, when they see people looking at them, they feel like, oh, my cover's blown. Because they're used to just being able to walk out and, in the middle of a conversation between two people and not be noticed. Someone might feel something kind of funny, but they don't see anything, so they just ignore it. But now, there are situations where, and I told a story about the younger sibling, where she could see, this is before this collapsing of the, of dimensions. This is like over, almost a decade and a half ago. She's sitting in my living room, and there's this guy walking through the room while she's sitting there, and he notices that she's following him with her eyes. And she said that once he noticed that, he slowly backed all the way out of the room. So again, what's going on now, people are starting to see the things that she used to see on the regular ever since she was a little kid. But I forgot where I was going to go with that.
Well, if you want me to add like an ending. Do you want an ending thing? Or?
Yeah, we probably do an ending. We might be kind of close to the end.
Oh yeah, we only have 1 minute.
Okay.
So lastly, I thought it was one of the most fun parts of the Matrix, was where Neo really gets serious, where he goes back into the Matrix to help Morpheus, and he's like, I'm gonna go all out. And I feel like, if this is the shift, why not put all of your energy into something that's real, your own journey with Chief? That's what I think.
Yeah, and you're not talking about that.
He's shooting people.
Yes,
no,
right.
I don't think shooting
So
people.
on and so forth.
Doing their containment and cooking for things
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
ask
and
them to.
understanding that whoever you're looking at, they're not doing this kind of with my work with me, and primarily with me. I do have someone who trained, but they still don't do it on the level that I do it. But anyway, I'm. My mind is just like going in all these places. Again, a little bit of apology because I have not slept since yesterday. Yeah. But again, we'll just go ahead and just wrap it up with that, though.
Yes, Chief.
And I appreciate everyone showing up again, and the questions And I think these questions are actually primarily from one person or two people.
Oh, everyone.
From everyone that's on. So, so all the questions from everyone, it really helps with the forums when you guys, do send in questions and ask questions. I appreciate it very much. So thank you for showing up again, and you have a good one, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chief.
Bye.
Thank you,
You're
Mrs.A.
welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye. I like crying babies. They're like the end of the video.
Oh.